Welcome everyone. We're really excited to have you here today. The three of us are going to appear in various modules throughout this program, and we thought introducing ourselves would be useful so that you can learn a little bit more about us and also learn more about sort of what led us to study leadership and what led us to think more about the linkages between leadership and communication, a topic, as you'll soon hear, the three of us are quite interested in. So maybe I'll get started if that works.
Sure.
As both of you sort of know already, before working at Rutgers, I worked at Villanova University and had a really terrific experience there working on the design of a center for student leadership and really focusing on undergraduate leadership programs. And one of the things that I was always interested in when working with student leaders was how many of them perceived themselves to be leaders, but also those who, because they lacked positional authority, really couldn't understand the ways in which they might be able to perform informal leadership. So in that work, I was doing a lot of coaching with different students and a lot of mentoring as well, and it was really fulfilling. I should also add that one of the things that became quite interesting to me because of my undergraduate work and then my work at Villanova was the focus on crisis and crisis in higher education. So a position was created at Rutgers where I'm now working in the Center for Organizational Leadership with you all, really enjoying it and having an opportunity to translate what I was doing for undergraduate students for faculty and staff and administrators across the university at a university that is so complex and so much different than my work at Villanova. It's been quite a learning experience, and fortunately, the opportunities for learning about leadership don't ever seem to end. In fact, they seem to grow more and more complex and expansive over time. Brent, why don't we hear from you? What led to your interest in leadership?
So I'm Brent Rubin, and I've been at Rutgers for a good amount of time, and was originally recruited to Rutgers. I think you may both know, but perhaps not, to start a school of communication, actually a department of communication. At that point, there was none. And while I was interested in communication then, I really had no particular interest in leadership. But in the process of developing a plan for what the department would be like, that involved some leadership, but the real interest in leadership came in trying to implement that plan. Had about a concept of about taking 5 years to put the department in place. Turned out to be off by about 15 years in my estimate. And realizing that the planning of something, the conception of something, is one interesting dimension, but then figuring out how to put it in practice is really where the leadership issues come in. So while I've been at Rutgers, I went through various promotions. I'm now a distinguished professor of communication, and going back about 20 years, the president at the time invited me to start a center called Communication and Quality Improvement at that point in time, and it's now Organizational Leadership, with the idea of trying to bring some of these principles of leadership and effective organizations that were being pioneered in corporations and in government, to bring those to higher education, see what we could learn from them and try to put them into practice to make Rutgers a more effective and efficient and welcoming organization.
So I'm Chris Goldthwaite, as you know, and the graduate program coordinator for the Center for Organizational Leadership. My interest in leadership really came about through working in industry. I worked in advertising, graphic design for many years. And after about 15 years, I decided to go back and get my master's degree and then my PhD. And I really I observed many problems in the organizations that I worked in and leadership challenges. So that's really where my interest came about. So I just decided to study organizational communication and also mediated communication. So that's where my interests come from.
Yeah. Thanks to you both. We're really excited for the opportunities to work with all of you and to talk a little bit more about leadership and communication, because it's so easy to take these terms for granted and also to see both of them as commonsensical in nature. In the writing that we've had a chance to do together and in the programs that we've also offered in our center, we've really tried to interrogate further really what's at stake with leadership focusing really on leadership in higher education in many ways, and to be able to sort of build upon the expertise of both of you and others that will be featured throughout the various modules, it could be a really enriching and hopefully insightful learning opportunity for anyone that's involved in this program. So thank you.
You know, as I look back on the time that I was working to develop the department with others, and I kind of realized that at that point in time, I was seeing this is just a personal experience, you know, how to bring about change, how to do these things. It wasn't until I started actually reflecting on it and then looking at some of the literature that I realized actually, no, there are core concepts here. There's issues of change, there's issues of analyzing who the stakeholders are, there's issues related to leadership, and you know, that if we kind of look at these at a little more theoretical way, there are insights that can be useful not only to individuals doing these things, but to people that are cutting across a variety of different situations where they're trying to apply the knowledge.
Can I ask, Brent, when you think about how higher education has changed, right? Because we talk about this a lot as being recent graduates of a doctoral program. We're taught as students how to do research and how to do research well. In some settings, we're also taught how to teach, although that's not always made explicit. But the fact that we're trying to prepare leaders in higher education to understand these core concepts and to be able to demonstrate them well really isn't emphasized entirely or even peripherally in the graduate programs that we're a part of. Do you see that changing in any ways, or do you see the need for it to change given sort of how the higher education landscape is evolving?
It's a really good question. I think, as you said, that teaching is a good example of how this has sort of evolved, because initially the thought was you don't have to learn really how to be a teacher, just learn your content area. You'll know your area, whether it's art or psychology or business or computing. You know that well, and you should just be able to walk into a class and be an effective teacher. That's proven not to be the case, and so there's a lot more emphasis now on helping people to prepare to be better and more effective at teaching. And I think the same kinds of evolution are happening as it relates to leadership. The thought used to be that you just would be trained in your discipline, you would become a master in your field, and then when it came time for you to move into a leadership role, like a department chair or a program director, you were a smart person, you're well educated, and it would be a simple matter to move into those jobs. But increasingly what's been recognized is while probably any smart person can do the job and learn it eventually, there's quite a steep learning curve, and that curve could be shortened a bit and made a little less steep if, as a part of your training, in doctoral education, there was some information provided and some skills provided on leadership, so that you were not only learning your disciplinary field and how to do research, but you were also learning something about how to be effective in collaborating and leading others. And I think that's a change that's starting to be emphasized in many institutions.
Well, I know my experience going through the pre-doctoral leadership program here at Rutgers was invaluable for helping me really understand all of the complexities of higher education. Because as a doctoral student, I really had no idea, really about the workings of the university. And especially here at our university, things are even more complex because of the size of the university.
So learning about leadership then, Chris, through both formal mechanisms such as a pre-doctoral leadership program and then also sort of informal observations. I know we've talked in the past about sort of looking at the leadership behaviors of people who have demonstrated leadership well, and then also those who maybe have been poor models for leadership. And then from each of these examples, really beginning to sort of develop your own style for leadership.
Yes, and I feel like I was very fortunate to have a mentor through the program who really introduced me to, effective ways of leading in the university.
And ironically, I think kind of implied by your question, you can perhaps learn as much from leaders who are not effective as leaders who are, because it kind of highlights what you don't want to do in the one case as well as what you do want to do in another.
Yes, I completely agree with that, yeah.